My family always relied on me financially, but when I stopped helping, they turned me into the villain. After years of supporting my family, I was expelled and accused of being selfish. There have been other occasions over the years when I felt ignored, such as birthdays when Mark would receive the pricey presents while I received something useful like new socks or a coat, or vacations when his family had all the attention while I sat quietly on the sidelines. It didn't matter, I told myself. I assumed that was just the nature of parents. In addition, I had always been self-sufficient. I didn't require the attention or the hype. Things changed even further once Mark married Becky and had his first son, Jason. Mark was suddenly more than simply the favorite, he was the one who brought us grandchildren. Now that they could proudly call themselves grandparents, my parents were ecstatic, feeling as though their lives had been completed. Though I couldn't help but feel a little invisible in my own family, I was also pleased for him. I dismissed it though, since family helps family, as I've always told myself. This is where it all began to go south. Mark lost his job at the conclusion of the previous year. His business was among the first to close when the small retail chain he worked for began closing its sites. It was awful. I was genuinely sorry for him. I recall Becky sobbing when she called my parents, concerned about how they would make ends meet on her meager part-time bakery salary. They were devastated to lose Mark's paycheck since, shocking as it may seem, he wasn't the best with money. However, my parents' solution was to ask him, Becky, and their 2 children to move in with them rather than helping him come up with a practical strategy to get back on his feet. It may seem acceptable on paper. Family stays together through difficult times, and they have room. The space they so kindly offered was mine, and that was the problem. It took place on a Sunday evening. I had just returned from a lengthy work trip, fatigued, and all I wanted was a bed and a shower. I sensed something was wrong the moment I went through the door. At the kitchen table, my parents were waiting for me. Dad was silent as usual, tinkering with his watch, and Mom had her typical worried expression. "Sarah, honey, we need to talk," Mom remarked. Suddenly tense, I sat down after dropping my bag beside the door. Mother didn't mince words. "You know how hard things have been for your brother since he lost his job. He's got Becky and the kids to worry about, and they really don't have anywhere else to go." My heart sank. I could already see where this was going. Even though I knew the answer before I spoke, I nevertheless inquired, "So where are they going to stay?" Mom's smile was as if she had practiced it 100 times. "The basement suite is perfect for them. It's separate from the main house, so they'll have their privacy. Becky and the kids will be comfortable there." I glanced at her, attempting to take it all in. "Wait, my basement suite? Where am I supposed to go?" Dad spoke up at last, although in a hushed tone. "We've set up the hobby room for you. It's cozy. You'll have plenty of space." What I was hearing was unbelievable. It was a glorified closet, the hobby room. It housed Mom's sewing machine, containers of seasonal decorations, half-finished projects, and stacks of fabric. It wasn't a bedroom at all. In the hopes that this was some strange prank, I asked, "You're kidding, right?" Mom became defensive in her tone. "It's only temporary, Sarah. Besides, this is our house, and we need to make decisions that benefit the family as a whole. You'll be fine in the hobby room for now." It was the old-fashioned statement. "It's our house." I sat there in startled silence as the talk came to a close, and my parents congratulated themselves on their generosity and helpfulness. I was not a big argue. What was the purpose? I didn't like it, but Mark was moving in. Neither my comfort nor my space mattered. That evening, I packed up my laptop, clothes, and toiletries. I gazed at my tiny suite in the basement, which I had turned into my home in recent years. It was mine, even though it wasn't flawless. I had my favorite scented candles, comfortable blankets on the couch, and bookshelves full of literature. It was all being torn away from me now to make room for Mark and his family. They didn't even ask, which was the worst part. It was determined for me, as if my opinions were completely irrelevant, and there was no discussion, no family gathering, and no, "Sarah, how do you feel about this?" Not in the hobby room, not in a house where I was obviously only a supporting part in someone else's story. I knew by the next morning that I couldn't stay. I therefore devised a strategy. I reserved a reasonably priced all-inclusive resort in the Florida Keys for the 2 weeks I had off in between job trips. It wasn't elegant, but it was less expensive than buying food and paying $1,600 for a property I no longer even lived in. It also included calm and tranquility, 2 things I really needed. My parents seemed uninterested in my plan when I informed them about it. The actual turmoil didn't start until I left, even though Mom responded, "Well, if that's what you need to do." My phone buzzed 2 days into my vacation at the resort. It was Mom's message. Mom. Hey Sarah, where's the money for rent and groceries this month? We're counting on it to help support Mark and the kids. Speechless, I gazed at the letter. She couldn't be serious, surely. When I gave her a call back, we had a conversation that went something like this. Mom, I don't live there anymore. Why would I pay rent? Because we're still a family, Sarah. You know we're all in a bind right now, and Mark needs that space more than you do. But you gave away my space, I'm not even there. At that point, Dad called, his voice firmer than normal. You can't just leave your family hanging like this. We raised you better than that. Talking to a wall was like that. They insisted on the same thing no matter what I said. I was self-centered. I was leaving my family behind. I also had a responsibility to Mark's troubles. Then Mark called and added his voice. Sarah, you don't understand. I have a family to take care of. You don't need the space like we do. I lost my temper. Mark, when you had your job, did you ever send Mom and Dad money to help out? No, you spent it all on yourself. So why am I supposed to bail you out now? That temporarily silenced him. I was trembling with rage by the time the call was over. I had been the one keeping everything together for years, taking care of my parents, making the payments, and being the responsible one. For what purpose? To be ejected from my personal space and accused of selfishness for standing my ground. I came to a realization at that point. This was no longer about supporting my family, it has to do with control. They betrayed me after I declined to play a part they had never asked me to play. Out of guilt, I sent Mom $400 for food, but that was all. I would no longer continue to support their lives at the price of myself. I was unaware at the time that this was only the beginning. The whole family would be rocked by my determination to defend myself, and I would never have encountered such a strong reaction. After I refused to continue paying for a place I no longer occupied, things quickly fell apart. I had no idea how far my parents and the rest of my family would go to keep me in line, even if I felt the guilt trip during that initial phone call was awful. The Florida Keys all-inclusive resort was meant to be my haven, a place where I could relax and get my mind straight. I wasn't spending $1,600 a month in a basement suite from which I had been evicted, for once. Everything I needed was there in the small bungalow I rented: good meals, a view of the pool, and most importantly, tranquility. It was like a taste of freedom, something I had been longing for but had not even understood. However, that tranquility was short-lived. My phone was constantly buzzing with missed calls and texts on the third day of my visit. Mom. Sarah, we're disappointed in you. This isn't what family does. Dad. It's not fair to leave us hanging like this. Are you only concerned with yourself, Mark? Every communication was like a kick to the gut. It was obvious that Mark had joined my parents' campaign to wear me down since they were unrelenting. At first, I didn't respond to any of them. The texts continued, despite my assurances that I needed time and that they would ultimately stop bothering me. Then came the phone calls. Out of pure exasperation, I picked up once, only to hear Mark's voice on the other end. His tone was accusatory, as if he had practiced the question. You know what you're doing to Mom and Dad, right? They're struggling. The house is too expensive, and now they're trying to help me and my family. You're making it worse by leaving. I don't get how you can be so selfish. What I was hearing was unbelievable. Selfish? I asked again, attempting to remain composed. You took my space, Mark. I'm not even living there anymore. Why would I keep paying for something I don't have? It's not about space, Sarah. It's about family. I have kids to think about, and you don't. You should be helping out more, not running away. Its daring was astounding. Here was my brother, who had mismanaged his finances for years, telling me that I owed him money to support his children. I ended the call. At the time, that was the only answer I could come up with. I was beginning to feel like I couldn't get out at the end of the week. Even though my parents lived in Riverside, 1,000 miles away, their comments followed me everywhere. There was a new message waiting for me each time I looked at my phone. The tone fluctuated, at times expressing rage, guilt, or an odd mix of the two. Mom. Sarah, think of Jason and the kids. They're just little boys. Do you really want them to suffer because you're being stubborn? Dad. You owe it to us. We took care of you when you were younger, now it's your turn. Mark. You'll regret this when the kids remember how their aunt turned her back on them. Nor were the texts the only thing. My extended family became interested. I began receiving calls from relatives I hardly knew, Uncle Gary, Aunt Linda, and others I hadn't spoken to in years. Aunt Linda? Sarah. Honey, she said on a single call. I'm sure you don't mean to upset your parents like this. They've done so much for you. Can't you just help a little longer? Mark really needs it right now. I felt like screaming. Bitterly, I thought, a little longer? What was the slightly longer duration? 1 more month? A year? Forever? I had been paying more than my fair share for years, but nobody seemed to care. The day following my return from the Keys was the last straw. I was in the middle of unpacking when my little Columbus apartment was knocked on. My parents were standing there when I opened it. With a heavy folder gripped in her hands, Mom appeared worn out but resolute. Although his presence loomed like a silent threat, Dad remained mute as usual. Stunned, I said, "Mom, Dad, what are you doing here?" Mom exclaimed, "We need to talk," as she walked into the living room, sweeping by me. I was forced to let them in after Dad pursued her. As if they owned the place, they took a seat on my couch. Mom began laying out documents on the coffee table after opening the folder. I knew right away what they were: supermarket receipts, repair estimates, and utility bills. "Sarah," she said, "we can't do this without you. Look at these expenses. The mortgage is still due, the roof needs repairs before winter, and Mark's kids need school supplies. We need your help." Stunned, I gazed at her. "I'm not living there anymore. Why should I pay for any of this?" Dad yelled. "Because you're part of this family. At last. Family sticks together when times are tough. You don't just run off because things get hard." I could feel my anger erupting. "You didn't ask me, Dad. You didn't ask how I felt about giving up my space. You just decided for me, and now you want me to keep paying for it? That's insane." Even if Mom's tone softened, the manipulation was obvious. "Honey, think of Jason and Liam. They don't understand why their aunt isn't helping. We just want to keep this family together." For me, that was the turning point. This had nothing to do with groceries, the mortgage, or even Mark's children. Control was at issue here. I was always supposed to be the good girl, the responsible daughter who would keep everything running smoothly, according to my parents. And they had no idea how to respond now that I wasn't complying. I got up and gestured to the door. "I think you should go." Mom's eyes got big. "Sarah." "No," I cut in. "I'm serious. You need to go." Dad appeared truly astonished for the first time. "They never expected me to resist, I believe." Mom remarked, "We're just trying to do what's best for the family," as they walked slowly to the door. I didn't answer. I locked the door after they had left. Then I sat trembling on the couch. My family's expectations, my personal wants, the years I'd spent being the good daughter, and the covert sacrifice of my financial independence so they could live comfortably were all on my mind as I lay awake that night. I realized then that I had been facilitating this scenario for years. They became reliant on me as soon as I began making money. They expected more from me the more I contributed. Mark's poor life management was not my fault, and I had no obligation to correct it. However, liberation was not going to be simple. I told my parents to back off, but they weren't going to do it. I would have to battle for my life if I wanted it back. At that point, I decided. I would continue to assist them when I could, but I would no longer allow them to dictate how I behaved. If I didn't live in the house, I wouldn't pay for it. I wouldn't feel bad about refusing to pay Mark's mortgage or his children's school supplies. I texted Mom one final time the following morning. "I can't continue to pay for everything, even though I love you. I'm not an ATM, but I'll assist when I can. Please be mindful of that." In less than an hour, the response was received. "Mom, I can't believe you're doing this to us, Sarah. We're family." I didn't respond. I felt like I was regaining control of my life for the first time in years. I foolishly believed that I had seen the worst of it, that perhaps, just perhaps, they would give me some breathing room after my parents' surprise visit and the onslaught of guilt-tripping texts. I was mistaken. In my family, it turns out that advocating for yourself is the same as declaring war. It creates a full-fledged tsunami rather than simply a ripple. The next stage of this conflict was a virtual family gathering, where everyone with a phone and an opinion had a front-row ticket to my crucifixion, in typical Evans family manner. An email was the first step. "Mom. Sarah, we've scheduled a family meeting for this Sunday at 3 p.m. It's important. Your aunts, uncles, and cousins will be there, please don't miss it." Of all the passive-aggressive things I had ever read, that please, was it? A meeting with the entire family? It was unbelievable to me. Was it really their intention to humiliate me by gathering the whole extended family? Did they believe that I might be fixed in some way by a mass ambush? I nearly forgot to log in. I considered completely disregarding it and letting them all shout into space, but I knew deep down that doing so would only serve to strengthen their story. Sarah's avoiding us because she knows she's wrong. I therefore set an alarm for 2:55 p.m., with a terrible feeling in my stomach, and joined the video conference. My parents, brother Mark, Aunt Linda, Uncle Gary, cousin Rachel, and a few more relatives who only ever showed up at weddings and Christmas dinners were all present when the screen loaded. I glanced at the squares on the screen, and I could tell from the reticent looks that I was going to be put to the death. The first person to speak was Mom, and she wasted no time in doing so. Her voice was filled with fake concern, as if I were a lost child rather than an adult who dared to put herself first. "Sarah, we're all here because we're concerned about you and the decisions you've been making lately." I remained quiet as they planned their speech. The next 30 minutes were a haze of guilt-tripping and accusations from all sides of the screen. Aunt Linda's response: "Sarah, we're all family here. You can't just turn your back when people are struggling. Mark and the kids need support right now. We all pitch in when times are tough." Uncle Gary says, "Your parents have done everything for you. Now, when it's your turn to step up, you're acting like it's too much to ask. Family comes first." Aunt Rachel: "I want to be independent, but you don't just cut off your family. That's not how we were raised." Naturally, Mark then added his voice: "Do you know how hard it is for Becky and me right now? The kids don't understand why their aunt suddenly doesn't care about them. Jason asked me the other day why you don't want to see them anymore. What am I supposed to tell him?" It was a powerful blow. Although I adore my nephews, Mark was well aware of his actions. He was using them as a weapon against me, manipulating the circumstances to paint me as a cold-blooded monster. After what seemed like hours, they finally gave me the opportunity to speak. Despite my trembling palms, I inhaled deeply and unmuted myself. "Look," I remarked, attempting to maintain a steady tone. "I love this family. I do. And I've been helping for years. Paying rent, paying for groceries, doing whatever I could to keep things running. But this is too much." Mom's expression tightened, but I persisted. "I'm not living at home anymore. You gave my space away without even asking me, and now you're expecting me to keep paying for it. That's not fair. You're all acting like I'm abandoning you, but I'm just trying to take care of myself for once." There was silence in the room. I wasn't done yet, but I could see Mom shaking her head and getting ready to respond. "Mark," I uttered while looking straight at his video square. "You're my brother, and I care about you, but you've never been responsible with your money. When you had a job, did you send money to Mom and Dad to help out? No, you spent it on yourself. And now, when you're in trouble, suddenly I'm the bad guy for not bailing you out." Despite his hot face, Mark remained silent. I added, "And the rest of you," as I turned to face my extended family. "Where were you when I was the one keeping everything afloat? None of you had anything to say when I was paying $1,600 a month for a basement suite I only lived in half the time. But the second I draw a boundary, suddenly I'm selfish." The ensuing hush was deafening. Uncle Gary was frowning, Aunt Linda was scandalized, and my mother was about to cry. Dad refused to look into my eyes as he sat there with his arms folded. Mom finally said something. "Sarah, we just don't understand why you're acting like this. This isn't like you." That was it. The last straw. I didn't wait for an answer before saying, "This is me, Mom. I'm just not the doormat you've gotten used to." With a gratifying thump, I closed my laptop after selecting Leave Meeting. The text began right away. "Mother. You didn't have to humiliate us like that." Sarah said, "We were trying to have a conversation." Mark said, "You've changed. I hope you're happy leaving your family behind." Aunt Linda said, "I can't believe how disrespectful you were to your parents." I disregarded them all. I no longer owed them an explanation. But despite my sense of justification, I was powerless to stop the guilt from eating at me. I had always been the good girl, the responsible daughter who never got into trouble, growing up. It felt strange to stand up for myself, like if I were violating some holy family law. I sat with a glass of wine on my couch that evening and tried to take it all in. I became increasingly aware that this was about more than just money and space as I gave it more attention. It has to do with control. My family had depended on me for years, thinking I would always be compliant. They turned against me as soon as I left that position. I have no regrets about my remarks throughout the meeting. It was the first honest thing I had said to them in years, if anything. I was aware that the worst was yet to come. My family was not going to silently give up. They had only barely begun. I hoped things would settle down after the family gathering. Perhaps I was naive, but I believed that perhaps the surprise of my at last defending myself would cause them to back off, give me room, give themselves time to think. I was mistaken. My refusal to back down simply made things more heated, if anything. I felt as though I had prodded the bear, and it was now using all of its strength to claw back. Boundaries were not something my family respected. They viewed them as obstacles to be surmounted. The attempts to pull me back into the fold were blatantly intrusive, the manipulation became more daring, and the guilt trips became more acute. It took place a few days following the family gathering. My coworker Sam stopped by my office as I was finishing up a customer report. "Hey, Sarah, some woman called reception asking for you and said she was your mom. She left a message with Emily, but I think you should hear it." I felt sick to my stomach. Emily gave me a sticky note while wearing a perplexed expression, and I followed him to reception. The message said, "This is Sarah's mother, Nancy Evans. We're going through a difficult moment, and I need to talk to her about some pressing family issues that may be interfering with her ability to concentrate at work. Please urge her to take the initiative. Thank you." I froze, looking at the message as if it were about to burn in my palms. My mother had contacted my place of employment. My workplace, not to see how I was doing, nor because of an emergency, but to leave a note implying that I wasn't doing my share to support the family. I was embarrassed, enraged. I crumpled up the message, my face burning. Sam smiled awkwardly at me. Everything okay?" I gave a rigid nod. "Yeah, it's fine, just family stuff." However, it wasn't good. As soon as I got home that night, I called my mother. "Why would you call my work, Mom? That's completely out of line." She sounded angry, as if I were the one who was being unfair. "I had to get your attention somehow. You're not listening to us, Sarah. Maybe hearing it from someone at work will help you see how serious this is." What I was hearing was unbelievable. "My work has nothing to do with you or Mark or your bills. You can't drag my professional life into this." Mom didn't think twice. "We're your family. We come first. You need to start acting like it." "No," I firmly answered. "I don't. I need you to respect my boundaries, and I need you to leave my job out of this." "Limits?" She laughed. "This isn't about boundaries, Sarah. This is about family loyalty. You're abandoning us and you don't even see it." I ended the call. Arguments were pointless. Nothing I said would convince my mother to change her story because she was so engrossed in it. When I woke up the following day, I was inundated with alerts. I knew who it was without even looking at my phone. My brother Mark had indeed made a Facebook post. His initial post was ambiguous, just enough to evoke pity without providing specifics. "Mark Evans. You discover your true family during difficult times. When it's inconvenient for them, some people lose track of their origins. Even though we're trying our hardest, it's difficult when some folks refuse to help." The comments came flooding in. "Mark, keep going, you're capable. Family is the most important thing. One day, whoever is disappointing you will come to repent it. Toxic people are not necessary in your life. Pay attention to your lovely family." But the best part was when Mark himself sent out a direct message. "Mark, Jason is constantly inquiring as to why you no longer come. Are you okay with me telling him that his aunt doesn't give a damn about him?" I sat there looking at my phone, feeling both angry and sad. Knowing how much I loved Mark's children, I detested the way he used them as a weapon against me. However, I was also aware that this was typical Mark behavior: play the victim, elicit pity, and paint me as the bad guy. I declined to respond. I refused to play his game. My parents were bound to try something different eventually. It was to be anticipated. I was enjoying some rare quiet time that Saturday morning while drinking coffee when someone knocked on my door. As I looked through the peephole, my heart fell. There they were, Dad and Mom, standing on my porch, Mom holding a manila envelope. I contemplated not responding. I knew they wouldn't go, but I might have acted as though I wasn't home. I inhaled deeply before opening the door. I said, "What are you doing here?" Without even waiting for an invitation, Mom took action. Dad followed her as she pushed past me. As though they owned the place, they took a seat on my couch, and Mom took out the folder. "We need to talk about finances," she continued, laying out receipts and bills on my coffee table. I gave my temples a rub. "Mom, we've been through this. I'm not paying for a house I don't live in anymore." With a stern voice, Dad said, "Sarah, you don't understand. We're struggling. Mark's struggling. The roof needs to be fixed before winter, and there are school fees for Jason and Liam. It's not just about you." I exploded. "It's always about me, Dad. It's about what I can give, what I can pay for, what sacrifices I can make to keep everyone else comfortable. Well, I'm done. I'm not your ATM, and I'm not responsible for Mark's problems. We're not asking for much, Sarah. Just $2,000 a month to help with the basics. Is that really so unreasonable? Mom shot back, her voice cracking. Stunned, I gazed at her. You think $2,000 a month is not much? Are you hearing yourself right now? From there, the discussion took a turn for the worse. They always responded with blame and guilt whenever I attempted to defend my position. After everything we've done for you, family is supposed to help each other. Mark has kids to think about. Sarah, you don't understand because you're single. I had finally had enough. I got up and gestured toward the door. You need to leave. Mom looked at me as if I had given her a slap. Sarah. They gathered their belongings and departed, slamming the door behind them, but Dad murmured something under his breath now. I collapsed onto the couch once they were gone, feeling as though I had just finished a marathon. My chest felt constricted, and my head was thumping. I kept thinking about the dispute, my dad's disappointment, my mom's tears, and how I felt like I was failing them. But I knew in my heart that I wasn't. I was simply worn out. I'm sick of having to make repairs all the time. I'm fed up with being the good daughter who gave up everything for different people. I was in a trance for the remainder of the day, oscillating between melancholy and anger. I was starting to feel the effects of the pressure, guilt, and relentless manipulation. I understood for the first time that this was more than a passing dispute. Unless I broke it, this loop would continue indefinitely. I vowed to myself as I laid in bed that night, I would not allow them to pull me back in. I would not back down no matter how much they tried to guilt me or how hard they pushed me. Stopping being their crotch was something I owed to myself. But they weren't finished yet, as I would soon discover. By no means. Upon my parents' unexpected arrival and their ridiculous demand for $2,000 per month, I believed I had seen every trick in the book. I believed I was at last ready for their guilt trips and emotional blackmail. I convinced myself that if I stood my ground, they would back off. Those who thrive on control, however, have a tendency to persevere. They get more intense. The following week felt like a pressure cooker. In little time at all, my parents quickly spread the word about their egotistical daughter leaving them when they needed her most. It wasn't until I began receiving calls and texts from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years that I realized how far they had gone. First, it was my Uncle Gary once more, who always managed to keep the peace in the family. Uncle Gary, he said. Sarah, your mom called me crying. She's heartbroken about everything that's happening. I get that you're upset, but can't you just compromise a little? Family is more important than pride. I tightened my jaw as I gazed at my phone. How did pride enter into this? Was it prideful to spend half the month living out of a suitcase and not want to pay someone else's mortgage? My cousin Rachel, who enjoys pushing her nose where it doesn't belong, then sent me a note. Rachel, I don't mean to be impolite, but this is a little ridiculous. Are you simply allowing your brother and his children to suffer, Sarah? It's chilly. I didn't believe you were that way. Whatever the truth, my parents had created their own version of events, making me the bad guy, the one who had deserted her family, the one who was more concerned with money than her sad brother and his helpless kids, and they made me the black sheep overnight, and it worked. Naturally, my brother Mark seized the opportunity to stoke the fires, posting more frequently and sharply on social media. Some people say they care about family, but when times get tough, they're nowhere to be found, Mark wrote on Facebook. Even if it means bearing this burden alone, I'll stop at nothing to ensure my children are happy. My phone buzzed with a notice from a group chat that my cousins and I were sharing, and I chose to ignore it until Rachel shared a screenshot of Mark's most recent message, adding, "Yikes, he's talking about you, isn't he?" His friends and random acquaintances flooded the comments with sympathy and encouragement, but no one knew the truth, and Mark didn't care. The humiliation was unbearable to me. Mark knew exactly what he was doing, portraying himself as the father who never gives up, the struggling hero, and me as the cold-hearted, self-centered sister who refused to help. My mother crossed another line just when I thought things couldn't get any worse. On Tuesday morning, I was in the middle of a conference call when my employer, Tom, knocked on my office door. Tom was uneasy. "May I speak with you for a moment, Sarah?" Dread gripped my gut as I nodded and muted my phone, and Tom shut the door behind him and took a seat across from me. "Your mom called the office again," he added with care. "She didn't speak to me directly, but she left a message with reception." My face flushed with shame. "I'm really sorry. I'll take care of it." "It's okay," Tom said, raising his hand. "Family matters come up. I wanted to make sure that everything was well. Please let me know if you require time off for whatever reason." I answered sharply, "There's nothing going on." And I detested the fact that my mother had brought my work life into her mess. "I'll make sure it doesn't happen again," I continued. My work was the one place I'd managed to keep apart from my family's craziness, and now she was invading it too. Tom nodded and walked away, but the damage was done. I felt ashamed and remained at my desk for a long time, staring blankly at my computer screen. How did she? My parents were trying harder, my brother was using his children as weapons, and the rest of the family had taken sides. By the end of the week, I was emotionally spent. The texts, phone calls, and gossip felt unrelenting, and I couldn't go a day without someone attempting to manipulate or guilt-trip me back into submission. I had just finished cleaning my apartment on a Saturday afternoon when I heard a knock on the door. I knew immediately who it was without even looking through the peephole, so I opened it to find Mark standing there with his arms crossed and a frown on his face. This was the last straw. "What are you doing here, Mark?" I inquired. He didn't waste time making small talk. "Sarah, we must speak. This has continued for too long." I stopped the doorway by crossing my arms. "No, Mark, there's no need for conversation. You must go." He raised his voice and screamed, "You don't get to just walk away from your family." Jason and Liam couldn't comprehend why their aunt no longer cared about them. "Mom and Dad are losing their hearts because of you. You're shattering mine." Something broke inside of me. "I'm not the one who left, Mark. You did that because you believed that I owed you something simply because I put in more effort and made wiser decisions, and that I should clean up your mess. I finished carrying you." For once, Mark had no rebuttal and appeared astonished, as if no one had ever spoken to him in that manner. "Go home, Mark," I murmured softly. "Nurse your own family. I'm finished." When I heard his footsteps departing, I felt a wave of tiredness slam over me. I stood there trembling for a second, half expecting him to knock again or yell through the door, but he didn't. My family wasn't just requesting assistance, they felt entitled to it. My money, my time, my life, and when I dared to refuse, they made it their mission to punish me for it. I sat on my couch that night and stared at the wall, thinking about everything that had happened over the past few months, including the eviction from my basement suite, the incessant guilt trips, the invasion of my workplace, and the lies Mark spread online. At that moment, I understood that I had two options. I could either walk away from this losing war or continue to fight it. One of the few people who had supported me during this ordeal was my buddy Jessica, whom I called the following morning. "Jess, I'm moving," I declared. "Where are you moving?" "I'm not sure yet. Outside the state. A long way off. I require a new beginning." Without hesitation, Jessica said, "Good. You're worthy. Sarah, do it for you." I put the pieces in motion over the course of the following 2 weeks, applying for a job transfer within my organization and beginning my search for apartments in Charlotte, North Carolina, a city I had always wanted to visit because it was close enough to provide me with space without making me feel like I was running away. I placed a brief letter on the kitchen table at my previous residence on the day I packed up my car and left Columbus, but I kept it a secret from both Mark and my parents. "I can't continue living this way, even though I love you. One day, I hope you'll understand." I don't know if they ever will. As I drove down the highway toward Charlotte, I experienced a strange range of emotions, including relief, anger for the way my family treated me, and grief for the family I had to leave behind. For the first time in years, I felt free. Free from obligations that weren't mine, free from guilt, and free to start over. The kilometers behind me made it clear to me that I was choosing myself, and for once, that was sufficient rather than fleeing. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. My mother always defended my older brother, but when he stole my younger brother's fiancée, our family could never be mended. My mother wants me and my brothers to overlook the fact that our younger brother's fiancée was stolen by our cunning golden child older brother. I never imagined that my family would fall apart in this way. A year ago, I would have laughed if someone had predicted that my elder brother, Caleb, would do something so heinous. My mother has always led us to believe that Caleb is the golden child, the one who did everything correctly. However, I can't stop thinking about how we got here as I sit here in my apartment and relive the nightmare that occurred only a few weeks ago. Logan's wedding, or what was meant to be Logan's wedding, was the beginning. Logan, my younger brother, is the most sincere individual I've ever encountered. He is a gentle, considerate man, who would give you his last dollar without hesitation. We were all overjoyed when he proposed to Avery. Avery seemed to love Logan as much as he loved her, and she was intelligent and humorous. Together, they were ideal. They were one of those couples you can tell is meant to be. And then there was Caleb. Even now, the details remain unclear. Logan and Avery were choosing flowers and completing the guest list one week. Avery was canceling the wedding the next week. Logan arrived at my door completely broken, which is why I can still clearly recall that day. His eyes were red-rimmed from sobbing, and his face looked pallid. He informed me that Avery had broken up with him. She simply stated that she couldn't carry it out without providing an explanation. I initially believed it might be chilly feet. Yes, that does happen. Weddings are a stressful event. Then, however, the truth was revealed. Avery and Caleb, who was supposed to be Logan's best man, appeared at a family BBQ less than 3 days later. We were all invited over for family time by my mom, Linda. I wanted to see how Logan was doing because I hadn't seen him since he arrived at my door crying. Caleb holding Avery's hand as they walked into the backyard as if it were the most natural thing in the world is something I will always remember. The whole yard fell silent, as if someone had put life on hold. As I tried to take in what I was seeing, I glanced at Avery and then at Caleb. "What on earth is this?" Louder than I intended, I asked. The king of smug smiles, Caleb, shrugged as if it didn't matter. He declared, "Avery and I are now together." Thankfully, Logan wasn't around, but my sister Riley dropped the pitcher of lemonade she was pouring. The patio's glass broke. I couldn't read my mother's expression as she looked at Caleb, but it wasn't one of shock. For me, that was the first warning sign. Linda had forewarned no one, but she instinctively knew this was happening. "You're kidding," I responded, trembling. Avery refused to look at me, so I hoped this was some terrible joke. Her face reddened with guilt, but she continued to stare at the grass. I've detested Caleb's calm-down expression since we were young. In a frustratingly casual tone, he stated, "It's complicated, Mason. But everyone will benefit from this." "For everybody?" I lost my temper. "How about Logan? You just took your brother's fiancée, but what about that?" The term "stole" made Avery wince, but Caleb didn't even pause. The relationship between her and Logan didn't work out. "This wasn't planned," he said. I made sure he didn't finish though. Too furious to even look at him, I bounded away. Riley came into the kitchen after me. "Did you see Mom?" she said, trembling. She said nothing at all. She seems to be fine with this. The second warning sign was that Caleb had always held a special place in Linda's heart. Being the eldest, he made the family proud with his corporate career and college degree. Logan and I, on the other hand, were just Logan and me. I used to make a joke about us being the family's spare parts, but it didn't feel humorous anymore. I gave Logan a call later that evening. I asked him if he was aware of Avery and Caleb. He didn't. He sounded hollow when I told him, not even upset. Silently. "Of course it was Caleb," he said. "It's always Caleb." The consequences were immediate. Riley completely cut all communication with Caleb. He dismissed my attempt to confront him once more, claiming that I was exaggerating. A few days later, my mother contacted me, her voice eerily serene. "Mason, we need to talk," she remarked. "About what?" Still fuming over Caleb and Avery, I inquired. "This weekend, we're having dinner at the house. Riley and you should come. It's time to put this behind us." I believed I had misheard her. Move past this? Logan was deceived by Avery. His heart was broken by her. Additionally, Caleb. She gently interrupted me, saying, "I know it's hard, but Caleb is still your brother. Despite his error, he is now content. Isn't that the important thing?" I couldn't speak. My mother, who was meant to defend us all equally, was once again taking Caleb's side. Riley rolled her eyes as I told her about the dinner. "Are you serious?" She is attempting to ignore this. Normal. I didn't disagree. Nevertheless, I felt compelled to leave, not for my mother or Caleb, but for Logan. I wanted him to know that he still had support. I was afraid of what I would discover when I arrived at my parents' house on Saturday. Riley was already there, crossing her arms as she sat on the porch. She said, "This is going to be a disaster," as I approached. I refrained from arguing. Caleb sat at the dining table as we entered, smiling as if he hadn't just split the family in two. Avery was also present, sitting next to him as if she were a part of the group. At the head of the table, our mother, Linda, was grinning as though nothing was amiss. "Come sit," she offered with a cheerful tone. "We're going to have a nice family dinner." Riley glanced at me as I gazed at her. I thought I may suffocate since the tension in the air was so heavy. However, as soon as I sat down, the catastrophe started. I was not interested in sitting at the table. To be honest, I wanted to just walk away and flip the fucking thing over. Riley and I had to speak for Logan because he wasn't present. Caleb needed to be called out. What everyone else was too cowardly to say had to be said. With a display of food so spotless that it seemed as though my mother, Linda, believed cooking could clean up this catastrophe, she stood at the head of the dinner table. She was grinning, bringing joy into the space as if she could make it material. Linda said, "Let's just sit down, eat, and talk." Riley whispered to herself, "I'd rather eat glass." As I glanced at her, Avery and Caleb were seated at the far end of the table. The sight of them together still made my blood boil. Avery. As if they were on a freaking date, Caleb had one arm thrown languidly over the back of her chair. However, Avery refused to look at Riley or at me. She continued to look at her dish with her head down, as though the mashed potatoes were the most amazing thing she had ever seen. I inquired, "Where's Logan?" I was surprised at how piercing my voice sounded. I got one of Linda's stoic "you're ruining this" expressions. "Logan decided not to come." Riley answered, "Yeah, no kidding," while crossing her arms. "Wonder why?" Linda gave her a stern look but remained silent. She probably knew Riley wouldn't give up. Riley has always been the firecracker among us. Even though she is only 2 years my junior, she has never shied away from speaking her mind, particularly when it comes to Caleb. Caleb, who was buttering a roll as if he hadn't just exploded a nuclear bomb in our family, caught my attention. "So, Caleb," I replied, "you're just okay with all of this?" He gave me his angry, calm down face as he gazed up at me. God, I detested that expression. Since we were young, he had been giving it to me as if he were superior, smarter, and older. He questioned, "What do you mean by this, Mason?" "This." I waved my hand at him and Avery and snapped. "Caleb, Logan's fiancé, was taken by you. The same Logan who asked you to be his best man because he trusted you enough. With this, are you kidding me?" With a heavy sigh, Caleb put down his butter knife, acting as though I was the one who was being unreasonable. "Look, Mason, this wasn't planned by Avery and me, and I know it's complicated. It just happened. Things just happened." Riley leaned forward in her chair and scoffed. "Is that your justification? You don't just happen to start dating your brother's fiancé?" Riley's comments made Caleb cringe, but he didn't raise his head. I was hoping she would stand up for herself and say something, but she just sat there and let Caleb speak. At last, displaying his aggravation, Caleb combed through his hair. "I won't just sit here and watch the two of you attack us. I have been open and honest with Avery. We're content together and don't require your blessing." "Honest?" I fired back. "You believe your treatment of Logan was sincere? You lacked the courage to tell him directly. Avery had to inform him when she decided to call off the wedding. That's enough." Across the table, Linda's voice could be heard. Mom gave me that familiar scowl of disapproval, the same one Mom used to talk back to me when I was a child. "We are not going to spend this dinner yelling at each other like children." Riley pushed her dish away and said, "Then maybe Caleb shouldn't have acted like one." Linda replied, "Riley, please," in a strained voice. "This isn't beneficial. The reason Caleb and Avery are here is to continue their family's journey. We must all extend forgiveness and move on from this." "Forgive and let this go?" Unable to believe what I was hearing, I gazed at her. "So you're just okay with this?" Slowly, I asked. "You're okay with what Caleb did to Logan?" Linda's expression softened, as though she were addressing a young kid who was just unable to comprehend the world. "Life is complex, Mason. Despite their mistakes, people should have the opportunity to be happy." "Happy?" Riley's fist slammed on the table as she burst. "Logan is wretched, Mom. You're behaving as if none of this is important. You're here acting like a hostess like it's Thanksgiving dinner after Caleb made him feel embarrassed." With his chair scuffing the wooden floor, Caleb got to his feet. "You know what? I don't have to sit here and have my home attacked. I've finished our talk." I yelled, "Sit down," in a low, menacing voice that even surprised me. I was so tired of Caleb walking away from everything. Responsibility, consequences. "Logan, you don't get to walk in here with Avery like nothing happened and then act like we're the problem." At last, Avery raised her voice, but it was tremulous and quiet. It wasn't supposed to happen like this." I turned to her, and so did Riley. I questioned, my rage mixed with incredulity. "Then why did it?" Avery seemed to be waiting for approval before speaking as she glanced at Caleb. She inhaled deeply when he remained silent. "Caleb and we started talking months ago. At first, it was innocent but—" She paused. "He told me things about Logan. Things that made me doubt everything." "What things?" asked Riley. Avery stumbled over her words. "He said Logan didn't really love me. That he was just going through the motions because he felt like he had to settle down." Caleb ... I froze as everything came together. For months, Caleb had been sowing doubt in Avery's mind. That was his personality. Attractive, cunning, and self-centered. Riley responded, "You've got to be kidding me. in a disgusted tone. You let Caleb convince you Logan didn't love you? Logan adored you, Avery. Everyone could see it. Avery winced, but Caleb moved ahead of her while speaking in a chilly tone. We're not going to sit here and let you two attack Avery. This conversation is over. Fine, I responded as I got to my feet. Then I guess I'll have this conversation with Logan instead. I'm sure he'll love hearing how his own brother was working behind the scenes to sabotage his relationship. Linda began. Mason. But I interrupted her. I turned and left, Riley following closely after me. Logan deserves better than this, Mom. And if you can't see that, then I don't know what to tell you. Riley released a breath that she had obviously been holding as soon as the front door closed behind us. She mumbled. Unbelievable. Caleb's not even sorry. He believes his own lies. I didn't respond. What Avery had revealed about Caleb getting into her head and manipulating her emotions had my head spinning. This was no fortuitous romance. For some reason, Linda was ignoring the fact that Caleb had been planning this for months. Riley turned to face me as we entered her vehicle and said, We have to tell Logan. I know, I replied. But I don't think this ends here. And I was correct. It didn't. Riley's engine hummed through the peaceful ride to Logan's place. She remained silent, and I did too. The identical thought was running through both of our minds. How in the heck were we going to explain this to Logan? Avery calling off the wedding was one thing, but what about knowing that Caleb had been deceiving her for months? That seemed like a completely different animal. I kind of thought Logan wouldn't respond when we arrived at his house. With the exception of the occasional text, he had remained a phantom ever since the split. However, the door slowly opened, revealing Logan staring at us with black circles under his eyes. He appeared slimmer, as if he hadn't eaten. He said, Hey, in a low voice. Didn't think I'd see you guys tonight. I said. Can we come in? After a moment of hesitation, Logan moved aside to allow us to enter. The flat appeared as worn out as he was. The curtains were drawn, his couch appeared to be his bed these days, and takeout containers were piled on the coffee table. Logan laughed without laughter when he saw that I was staring. Yeah, I know it's a mess. Take a seat, he said, sweeping papers from the cushions and pointing to the couch. Logan remained standing, leaning against the wall with his arms folded, while Riley and I sat. He appeared protective, as though he was aware that we weren't just stopping by. What's up? He finally inquired, his gaze darting between us. Riley didn't hold out. Logan, we need to tell you something about Caleb. Logan stiffened as soon as she spoke Caleb's name. His eyes widened and his jaw tensed. I don't want to talk about him. I whispered. You need to hear this. It's about what really happened with Avery. Her name made Logan cringe. I thought he was going to throw us out, but he sat down in the armchair across from us after letting out a trembling breath. Fine, he replied. Say whatever you came here to say. I didn't mince words. Despite the pain, Logan deserved to know the truth. Avery told us tonight that Caleb had been talking to her for months. He told her things that made her believe you didn't really love her. At first, Logan's expression remained unchanged. He remained motionless as he gazed at me. He gently averted his gaze and squeezed his fists against his thighs, but I wasn't even positive he had heard me. He spoke the words. So Caleb convinced her to leave me, in a whispery tone. Manipulated her, said Riley again. He played with her head. Logan, she stated. She thought you were just settling for her because Caleb got in her ear. Logan gave a sour laugh, but it was devoid of humor. Of course he did. That's Caleb. He's always been good at taking things that don't belong to him. I was astonished by the hostility in his voice. Logan has consistently maintained our family's composure. Logan is the quiet anchor if Riley is the firework and I am the middle child who is always caught in the between. He is not angry. He simply becomes depressed. Now though, he now had an angry expression. He's done this before, Logan stated abruptly as he looked at the ground. Riley said, What do you mean? Logan's expression darkened as he looked up. Do you honestly believe that this is the first time Caleb has taken anything that was rightfully mine? Do you recall my senior school soccer tryout? Logan inquired. While attempting to piece things together, I scowled and said, Yeah, you didn't make the team. No, I did, Logan said with a sour smile. Caleb persuaded the coach that he would be a better option and that I was unreliable, even though I made the squad. It took me years to find out. While Caleb made varsity, I was dismissed. What? Riley's eyes widened. Why didn't you say anything, Logan? Because nobody would have believed me, he shrugged, adding, Caleb has always been the one. The golden boy is Caleb. Caleb is impervious to error. After hearing this, something clicked in my mind. Caleb had been our mother's world for years, charming, ambitious, and self-assured, everything an ideal oldest son should be. However, now that the cracks were showing, it became clear that he didn't just take things because he wanted them. He did it to win, to show that he was superior to the rest of us. Logan, I continued slowly, what do you suppose caused him to do this to Avery now? Logan gave me a dumbfounded look and said, because he could. I've always made Caleb envious. It's not over. He does a good job of hiding it. Like he's taken everything else, I believe he decided to take away Avery after realizing how happy I was with her. Logan was right. This wasn't just about Avery. It was about Caleb needing to repeatedly demonstrate that he was the best, regardless of who he injured along the way. There was a brief period of silence. Riley appeared to want to punch a wall, and I felt sick to my stomach. Logan wiped his face and said, you know what's the worst? I cherished her. I cherished her dearly. I also had faith in Caleb. I assumed he was pleased with me. I muttered, I'm sorry, since I had no idea what else to say and it seemed so hollow. You don't have to apologize to me, Logan said, shaking his head. Please let me know what you plan to do about it. Riley grimaced. What are you saying? Logan's voice was harsh as he stated, I mean, Caleb isn't done? You think he's simply going to stop after this? Mom is already on his side. I'm the bad one for not letting it go, but he'll keep making things up until the rest of the family forgives him. He acts in that manner. Riley and I looked at each other, and Logan was right. I hate to say it, but our mother was already setting the stage for us to go over this, and if we didn't do something, Caleb would win, as he usually does. Riley stated, Mom needs to see what's going on, so we need to talk to her. She cannot continue to stand up for him. Good luck with that, said Logan, snorting. Until the day she passes away, Mom will stand up for Caleb. Your time is being wasted. Linda had always made excuses for Caleb, perhaps because he was the firstborn or because he reminded her of herself, but whatever the reason, she had been ignoring Caleb's behavior for years, and it had finally come to this point. I didn't want to believe that, but I knew deep down that Logan wasn't wrong. One thing was clear to me as I watched my younger brother sit in his damaged apartment though, Caleb was not going to get away with this time. I firmly stated, this time, we're not going to let him win. After giving me a long look, Logan nodded and said, good. Because I'm tired of being a punching bag for Caleb. I sensed a change in myself as Riley and I left Logan's apartment that evening. I was done being kind, done letting Caleb bully everyone while Linda applauded him, and it was time to face Caleb head on. This time, I wasn't going to hold back. Riley and I quickly decided what needed to happen next. Caleb needed to be confronted, really confronted, and not just about Avery. This was about everything that Caleb had been doing for years, including manipulating people, twisting circumstances, and making himself appear like the ideal son while ignoring the rest of us. Logan was correct. Caleb wouldn't stop unless he was forced to, and we were going to force him. When Riley and I unexpectedly arrived at our parents' house the following morning, Linda opened the door, looking astonished to see us and as though she had been up all night worrying. To be honest, good. Her grin was forced. Mason, Riley, she continued. What are you doing here? We need to talk to Caleb, I said as I walked into the living room, sweeping past her. Linda groaned deeply as she shut the door, and Riley trailed behind me. This again? Can't you just, she asked, her voice already worn out. Riley interrupted, turning to stare at her saying, no, Mom. We can't. Is Caleb present? I inquired. He's upstairs, but I don't know why you, Linda said after hesitating, then nodded. Perfect, I murmured as I made my way up the stairs. Linda called after me and said, Mason. Don't start anything. Linda had let Caleb for too long, and it was time for someone to do what she wouldn't do, so I disregarded her. I didn't care what Linda thought at this point. Caleb was sitting on his bed with his laptop open when Riley and I marched up the stairs and down the hallway to his old bedroom. The door was half open, so we didn't bother knocking, and I pushed it open. His face twisted into a mixture of smugness and annoyance when he looked up and saw us. To whom am I due this distinction? Here to lecture me some more? Caleb replied, leaning back against the wall and shutting his laptop. I crossed my arms and remarked, we're here for answers, not to lecture you. I've already explained everything, Caleb said, rolling his eyes. I didn't plan this with Avery, it just happened. Why aren't you all able to accept that and go on? Because it's a lie, Riley said. Avery told us that you had been peeping into her head for months. You were ruining her friendship with Logan the entire time, Caleb. Even as Caleb's face reddened, his arrogant look persisted. So? What? Relationships are always ending. Logan's inability to retain her is not my fault. You think this is a game, don't you? I said, stiffening my fists at my sides as I walked toward him. You're not even sorry for what you did. Why would I? Logan was never right for Avery, Caleb retorted. I was kind to her. You took her. Riley screamed. You can't stand seeing other people happy, so you tricked her into leaving Logan. Watch it, Riley, Caleb said as he got to his feet, his face changing to a more icy one. You have no idea what you're discussing. I answered softly. Oh, we know precisely what we're talking about. Caleb, you've been doing this for years. Stealing what belongs to Logan, undermining him, and claiming to be the golden child while the rest of us suffer as a result. You're being dramatic. Caleb grinned. Am I? Logan told us about the soccer team, how you persuaded the coach to cut him so you could take his place. I shot back. Does that sound familiar? For a brief moment Caleb's grin wavered, but he immediately got back to it. That was years ago. Who gives a damn? Logan is concerned. Just like you ruined this, you ruined that for him, Riley yelled. Caleb chuckled, but it was a mocking, bitter laugh. You guys are unbelievable, he said. Do you believe that I am the bad guy? Logan is pitiful. He was and always has been. He allows others to walk all over him because he is weak. Avery chose me because I'm superior to him. I didn't steal her. Riley stepped forward and poked a finger at Caleb's chest, saying, You're not better than anyone, Caleb. Even though I could feel my fury boiling. The only reason you get away with being a manipulator and a liar is because Mom allows it. Caleb snarled. Leave Mom out of this. Why? Riley retorted. We all know you're her favorite. No matter what you do, she will stand up for you. Linda suddenly materialized in the doorway. What's happening in here? With a strong voice, she demanded. Riley turned to stare at her and added, Ask your perfect son. Adding that he had recently confessed to coercing Avery into leaving Logan. Linda turned to face Caleb as her face went white. Is that true? Of course not. Caleb answered softly, his voice flowing. Mom, they're misrepresenting what I said. I didn't do it. You claim that Avery picked you because you're superior to Logan, Riley yelled. Linda's expression was unreadable as she turned to face Caleb, who gave her a wide, naive look, as he often did when he had to get out of trouble. Come on, Mom, you are familiar with me, I would never act in such a manner. For a while, I hoped that Linda would finally recognize Caleb for who he truly was, but she hesitated, and I could see the doubt in her eyes. Then, as usual, she folded. Her voice was tense as she replied, I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding. We're not going to solve anything by yelling. Riley laughed bitterly and said, It's unbelievable. You continue to protect him. I'm not defending anyone, Linda responded. But I'm not going to let this family fall apart over a relationship that didn't work out. This family already is falling apart, I whispered quietly. And it's because of Caleb. Caleb looked bored and shrugged, saying, Cry about it. I finished our talk. Riley snapped, No. We're done with you. What is the intended meaning of that? Caleb narrowed his brows and asked. I said, Logan's done. It means we're not letting you win this time. Riley is finished. I am too. You're by yourself. You can't just cut me out of the family, Caleb said, looking truly shaken for the first time. Watch us, replied Riley icily. Mom, you can act like Caleb is flawless all you want, but the rest of us aren't playing along anymore, I said, turning to Linda, who appeared stunned. Either you're with us or you're with him. You make the decision. Linda gave me a slap-like look and said, You can't ask me to choose. Riley remarked softly. You simply aren't aware that you've already made your decision. I believe that Caleb recognized that he had finally lost control and pushed himself too far since he didn't say anything as we were leaving, and for once, he didn't have a smug response or a lazy shrug. I was relieved as Riley and I left the house because, although Caleb might not be facing actual repercussions today, he would eventually, people like him usually do, and I wasn't going to be there to catch him when he fell for the first time. After that altercation, we didn't hear from either Caleb or Linda for a few days. To be honest, I believe they were both waiting for us to return, as we always did, especially with Linda. In our family, things had always gone like this. Caleb made a mistake, Mom covered it up, and the rest of us had to keep our mouths shut for the sake of keeping the peace, but not this time. You have no idea how long I felt like I was screaming into a void, I added, and Logan actually appeared glad when we told him about what had transpired at the home. It's about time, he muttered. shaking his head. Riley and I had made our decision. Linda made several attempts to contact us over the course of the following week, first by phone and then by text, but each message was the same. Family doesn't behave like this, so we need to communicate. Caleb is your brother, and while I understand your anger, this has gone too far. You don't fully comprehend the story. Let's discuss this over dinner. We chose to ignore her. Riley, Logan, and I were all on the same page for the first time, and it felt liberating. Caleb was no longer our responsibility, so we didn't have to comply if Linda wanted to hold on to him. Caleb wasn't finished though. On a Thursday night, I received a call from an unknown number. I don't typically accept such, but for some reason, I decided to answer. Hello, Mason. I remained silent for a moment, almost expecting Caleb to knock on my door, but I was still taken aback when I heard his voice. It sounded desperate, not cocky or arrogant. What are you looking for? With a flat voice I asked. Caleb hurriedly continued. I need to talk to you. It's important. Hard pass. His voice trembled. Mason, please. And I was shocked because Caleb demanded things instead of asking for them. I answered, against my better judgment. All right. Don't talk on the phone. In an hour, meet me at the depot, please. I didn't want to attend, but I couldn't get rid of the feeling that something wasn't right. The depot was an old diner we used to frequent as kids, and it felt strangely symbolic, as if Caleb was trying to exploit some shared history to guilt me into listening. I didn't recognize Caleb for a moment when I entered the depot an hour later and saw him sitting at a booth in the corner. He had bags under his eyes as if he hadn't slept in days, and his normally flawless hair was unkempt. Caleb, what do you want? I questioned, slipping into the seat across from him. He didn't immediately respond, instead looking down at the table with his fingers tapping nervously. I messed up, he finally stated in a hushed voice. With a sour laugh, I said, yeah, no kidding. No, Mason, I made a huge mistake, more than you thought. I had never seen Caleb this afraid, and there was something about the way he said it that made the hair on the back of my neck rise up. What are you discussing? I inquired. After inhaling deeply, Caleb shakily exhaled. I'm in trouble. Bad luck. I saw panic for the first time in his eyes as he glanced up at me. What sort of issue? With quivering fingers, Caleb ran a hand through his hair and nodded. Debt. I owe a lot of people a lot of money. Mason, I made an effort to correct it, but it got out of hand. His voice broke as he trailed off. Avery. What are you saying? I asked, feeling sick to my stomach. I think I've never seen Caleb seem so embarrassed as he looked at me. I needed money, he said. I reasoned that by getting to know Avery better, I might be able to persuade her to assist me. Her family is wealthy, so I reasoned that perhaps. You made use of her? Startled, I cut in. You used Avery as leverage because of your debt? Despite his recoil, Caleb said. I didn't intend for it to get this far. Although I didn't anticipate her leaving Logan for me, I was unable to stop it once it got going. Caleb had not simply taken Logan's fiancée because he wanted to win, he had done it out of desperation. He had played with Avery's emotions, ruined Logan's life, and split our family apart in order to hide the catastrophe he had created for himself. I gazed at him, trying to take in what he had just said. Is Mom aware? Quietly, I inquired. No, and she can't, Caleb said, shaking his head. If she learns, I'm finally able to recognize you for who you truly are. Good, I responded sourly. She is entitled to the truth. Caleb's voice was suddenly begging, please, Mason, I need your assistance. I have no other people. Aid you? I chuckled incredulously. Are you serious? After all of your actions? Caleb said. You're my brother. Family is meant to stay together. Don't you dare pull the family card, I responded. You don't get to hide behind that after what you did to Logan. Like a drowning man pleading for a life raft, Caleb gazed at me and said, please. Without you, I am unable to resolve this. I felt nothing for Caleb for the first time in my life, no rage or hatred, just emptiness. He was no longer my brother, he was just a man who had ruined every relationship he had ever had. I got up and said, Caleb, you need help, but it won't come from me. Caleb started to disagree, but before he could say anything more I left. Later that night, Riley, Logan, and I convened at my place, and for once, no one was shocked when I told them all Caleb had confessed. Logan said, he's always been like this. It just took him this long to fall apart. How about Mom? Should we tell her? Riley said. After giving it some serious thought, I shook my head and said, no. She's made up her mind. Let her if she wants to think Caleb is flawless. We're done with him though, alongside her. With everything. I had spent my entire life trying to keep this family together, but now I know that sometimes you have to let things fall apart. For the first time in years, I felt free. Neither Linda nor Caleb were my burden anymore. With a small smile on his lips, Logan turned to face Riley and me and said, "You think we'll be all right?" "Yeah," I replied with a smile. "We'll be all right." And I did believe it for once. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.